All right, so we're going into this new lecture about plant behaviors. Their structural adaptations and the behavioral adaptations. Plants actually respond. I know we look at them and we're like, you're just sitting there because you're a plant. But they do things. I was looking at plants changing in my office. A former student gave me a little ceramic snake head, I guess. And you put grass on the inside so it's got hair. And I grew it, and I noticed, because I was just like, ooh, let's water it, everything's cool. When the seeds sprouted way faster than I ever expected them to, it was over the weekend, and all of the blades were pointing toward my door, because that was the only source of light. It was super neat, because then I came in, I turned on my lights. By the time I got back from class, they're all pointing straight up toward the lights. Plants behave. They try to adapt themselves to their environment. One of the primary ways that plants are adapted to their environment is you look at their leaves. Tell me about the shape of a leaf. This leaf, right here. Sure, but how would you describe it? It's got lots of little points. What else? What color is it? Why? Chlorophyll. What does chlorophyll do? It helps with photosynthesis, makes some sugar, and so it's flat. Why is it flat? When in doubt, increased surface area. This tree, does it survive very well in winter? No. Why? Because the leaves are flat. So what happens to the leaves, the flat leaves that have all the surface area in winter? They die, they freeze, they collect snow. It's bad. So this particular tree is very well adapted to surviving in hot summer months where there's a lot of sun present. The leaves are going to develop at the very tips of the shoots. They're absolutely adapted to maximize photosynthesis for their particular environment. Some leaves are scales, like the conifers we talked about before. They're super highly compact. A lot of times they're in tufts. And what these tufts do is they they trap air. Air is a great insulator. So you can trap warm air in there. When it starts, the sun comes up in the morning. The leaves warm up, of course, but that also warms up the air in between them. So that overnight, those leaves can stay alive and not freeze. Of course, we have the leaves we just talked about, the flat leaves that are maximized to catch as much light as possible during summer months. But it's just interesting to look at the different types of leaves and to understand how they're adapted to their environment. Have you ever seen a magnolia leaf? They're very big and broad, but they're also very waxy. Why are they that waxy? It's not just so, it's more important than water falling off of them. What is it? You're right, it's all about water. They're hydrophobic, waxes. But why do they have this waxy outcoming? No, you're thinking bryophytes. But you're right, it's to protect something, but it's all about water. It's not to let water roll off them. What is it for? It doesn't collect water, water rolls off them. That's not the reason, though. Okay. That's the big thing. Across the board with all plants, water needs to stay on the inside. The waxy layer of those magnolias, it lets them survive in hotter environments because it keeps water in. So those are leaves. Top of the plant. Bottom of the plant, roots. As if you didn't know that. The root has three zones to it. It's got meristematic tissue at the bottom. There's also a root cap. The root cap's not rapidly growing. It's sort of like a little, it's a hat, really. It provides cover so that as this plant is drilling downwards, the rapidly reproducing cells aren't damaged. Then you've got that root tip, lots of mitosis. The zone of elongation, where the cells are growing along their edges. They're getting longer. And then what's known as the zone of maturation up here, where the cells are taking sort of their final adult form. So you've got the root cap protecting the meristem. That meristem, you've got lots and lots of mitosis. The next level up, those new cells that were just created are getting longer in the zone of elongation, which helps push the root deeper into the ground. And then that's followed by the zone of maturation, where the cells start taking on their final adult characteristics. Obviously, this is just to produce new root cells. Something similar happens at the top of the plant. In here, we looked at an onion root tip. Do you guys remember that? It may not have been this semester. I think it was last semester. But the onion root tip, you had one area at the bottom where these cells were sort of almost dying. That's the cap. Then there's an area where there's a whole lot of mitosis way at the edge. And then behind that, so you saw like all of the different phases of mitosis there. Behind that was the zone of elongation, just a whole bunch of long cells that were done dividing. They're just maturing. There are a lot of different types of roots, and they are really cool. Okay, I say that because I'm a biologist, but you guys may not care. But trust me, they're interesting. You've got prop roots, fibrous roots, tap roots, and my favorite, the nematophore. Prop roots, their job is to prop up a plant. They sort of act to stabilize the plant. These plants usually have a very shallow root system, and they're going to have secondary roots growing off of the plant that just hold it up. They don't actually get nutrients. If you've looked at a tomato plant before, you've probably seen roots, what look like roots coming off of the stem itself and going into the ground. Corn plants, same thing. Very shallow root system, but other roots extending out to hold the plant up, to provide it structure. So prop roots prop up a plant. Fibrous roots, they're going to be very, very thin roots that extend over a large area. These roots are actually used for collecting nutrients. They're thin, so you've minimized surface area in order to, maximize the surface area exposed to soil so that you can pull nutrients in from the soil. Oftentimes there's an association with a fungus. But these roots are all about pulling in nutrients. Tap roots are one big thick root with a whole bunch of root hairs. And they drill down really deep into the ground in order to pull out water and nutrients. Where fibrous roots extend wide, these extend down. Have you ever tried to pull a dandelion out of the ground? It's hard because dandelions have tap roots. You may pull off the top of the dandelion, you may get a bit of its root, but it's going to grow back from all those times you blew dandelion seeds into your yard. Because that tap root's really long. A carrot is a tap root. It's got a green plant growing at the top. In order to get it out of the ground, you have to dig it out. Unless you're like, I don't know, cartoon rabbit, then you can just pull it out and throw it. But tap roots extend down deep in order to pull water where other plants can't. And that's why these guys survive when fibrous root plants don't. Because that tap root drills down deep. It's like if you dug a well. Let me tell you a fun story. I didn't realize this about how brilliant my dad was. So this is evidence of how awesome my dad is. We bought a house. Like I was involved. He bought a house. And he bought a house. He moved out of Maryland and moved down to Stafford, Virginia. And he bought a house that there wasn't any city water or anything like that, so you had to dig a well. So his house was at the bottom of the hill. And he dug his well 20 feet deeper than anybody else dug their wells. So that when a drought came along and everybody was on these water restrictions, and they were running low on water, we were just fine because our well was deeper than everybody else's. We were able to pull water from deeper down where other people, that top layer had dried out. Does that make sense? So what's happening with prop roots? Prop roots can go deeper down than fibrous roots can. Fibrous roots, they're going to run out of water. These tap roots, they're not. Super deep well. And my absolute favorite type of root, the nematophore. The nematophore is not designed to collect nutrients and things like that. Some areas flood very consistently. Think mangrove forests. If you've ever been to like near a beach or near a river, you're going to see a lot of sticks coming out of the ground. And you look at those and you're like, oh, the baby trees died. Those aren't baby trees. Those aren't sticks. Those are the roots of the trees around them. And they're coming out of the ground in order to collect collect carbon dioxide. So when this area floods, the flooding doesn't come and cover these roots, so they act like snorkels, allowing the tree's roots to continue to survive even under these very wet conditions. A tree can absolutely drown. Heck, you may notice a whole bunch from, what was it, last year when we had torrential rainfall, and it didn't go away forever. A bunch of trees died simply because they were lacking nematophores. They couldn't breathe underground. So though the top of the tree could exchange gases just fine, underground, they couldn't, which led to rot. Sidebar. During that torrential rain and everything, my entire backyard flooded. And I just bought my house, and I was like, this must happen all the time. So I built a retaining wall. And I hurt my back doing it. I just finished the retaining wall. But now that we've had apparently what's considered a normal year, all that water's gone away. So now I have this 2-foot-high retaining wall and a whole bunch of grass where there used to be just all water. So I'm kind of like, man, I wish I didn't build that now. But so there we go. Super fun. All the trees, but the reason I bring that up is some of my trees were dying back there. I had to come and get them chopped down or else they'll fall in my house because there was so much water, they couldn't breathe, and they died. All right, so that's how plants can survive. Their structures are adapted to water. Their structures are adapted to pull in nutrients. Plants also respond to stimuli. Plants have behavior. They do things, and you don't think about that with plants, and I love it. They have internal stimuli. Just like you have internal motivations, they've got internal stimuli. They react to chemical signals. Those are called plant hormones that control their development. Plants have hormones. You have hormones. Your hormones and plant hormones do the same thing. They tell parts of the multicellular organism what to do and how to develop, how to react, how to act. And there are 2 kinds of hormones I want you to know. Auxins are one. Auxins are plant hormones that cause shoots to grow. So if I was to take an auxin and put it on a pluripotent pluripotent plant cell, I will get a shoot to grow. There will be no roots, but a shoot will grow up. Here, we've got plants that were treated with an auxin, and you can see lots and lots of shoots compared to the control group. Lots of shoots, hardly any root. You can get roots if you have another type of hormone. Phototropism is caused by auxin production. Phototropism is the plant's ability to move toward light, just like that grass did in my office. So what will happen is auxin production will cause cells to grow longer, which will then bend the plant in one way or another. If the auxins are being evenly produced throughout the plant goes straight up. It's called phototropism because it's movement due to the sun. The other type of hormone is a cytokinin. For lack of a better word, cytokinins encourage mitosis. They increase the rate of cell division, especially in roots. So auxins make you grow up, cytokinins make it grow down. If you were to clone a plant, hypothetically speaking, you would take any cell you want from that plant and apply auxins to it. That creates a shoot. Then you take that little shoot you've got and apply cytokinins to the bottom. That makes roots. If I had my way, we'd be doing a month-long experiment on this. In lab, not like in here. But I think that it would be really cool to go through scientific method using different levels of hormones on plants. And then you guys could just take plants home that you cloned. It would be cool, but apparently we need to do other things. Like dissect pigs. It's the ratio of auxins to cytokinins that determines whether or not what part of the plant will grow. This is how modern genetic techniques have allowed us to very efficiently and quickly reproduce plants. You can make one plant. It's very, very expensive to make a new plant. If you're going to genetically modify it, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of money. You're looking at like $100,000, $150,000 to get a good plant. But once you have that one plant, then you can go into full-on production and make millions upon millions of them very, very cheaply. It's actually super interesting. So a lot of universities, Auburn University had a contest. I guess it was a contest, or a bounty, maybe you didn't say it. They would pay $500,000 to anybody who could produce a blue daylily. Yeah, because blue doesn't naturally occur in daylilies. You'll never see a blue daylily. So if you could genetically modify a daylily to produce blue, $500,000. And why? Because then they would take it and for pennies produce millions of them. And then they'd plant them all over their campus because, I don't know, I think they were like orange and blue or something. And then sell them as licensed products from their college. $50 a plant, $100 a plant. And I don't know if you guys know football fans, but they can get kind of crazy. What?
Well, no, that means when somebody, like, when you rob somebody, you just mean...
Plants can respond to their external environment. They can, the environment will impact their growth patterns. It'll impact when they flower. It'll impact their lives through photoperiod, thigmotropism, flooding, and pathogen attacks. Photoperiod. Plants have pigments. Plants can detect the amount of light that's out there. Obviously, the pigment you know best is the chlorophyll. Other pigments are there not to provide color, but to tell the plant how long the sun is in the sky. That helps the plant figure out when's the best time to produce fruit. Heck, even trees getting ready for fall. People think, well, it's getting colder, so the leaves are starting to fall. It's nothing to do with it. It's all about how long the sun is in the sky. And you can trick plants because, you know, that might be the way you roll. You're like, haha, plant, I fooled you. There are some plants that will flower on a short photoperiod. That is, if they have a day that, well, in this particular instance, if daylight is short and nighttime is long, then they're going to flower during the, let me put this, sorry, I said that the wrong way. Okay, think about it this way. Plants, ignore that image. Plants bloom in the summer, right? During the summer, are the days long or short? Longer. Everybody's good on that idea, right? So if you were to put a plant in the sun for a longer period of time, they're going to produce flowers. Winter comes along. The days get shorter. The night is longer. That signals the plant now is not the right time to produce flowers. If during the winter months you subjected your plant to in the middle of the night, give it a 5-minute shock of light, that is, turn on a light for about 5 minutes, it will trick them into thinking that the day cycle is actually much longer. and cause them to start blooming in the winter. That being said, they'll probably die because of the exposure to the elements.
So plants only need like light. It doesn't need to be exactly sunlight.
It does, well, this light it has the right, you have to have it at the right wavelength. So you do need multiple wavelengths. You can't just be like, and here's your green light or here's your yellow light. You need multiple wavelengths hitting it. But yeah, just a flash of light. You cannot grow green light to grow plants. Green light will kill plants, as if they were in the dark. So photoperiod, determined by these pigments being exposed to the sun, tells the plant when it's time to bloom, when it's time to go into hibernation and such. Plants understand gravity. Even if a plant falls on its side, it will keep growing up. And it's not growing up to get to the sun. It's growing up because it's growing against gravity. If you've ever taken seeds and you've put them into the ground, the plant underground, the seed underground, has no sun to orient toward, right? The plant doesn't see the sun. There's no light getting underground. Yet it still always grows up. Even if the seed is upside down, the root grows down, the shoot grows up, because they can detect gravity. They have these cells called staphyloths that actually orient directly to the source of gravity. They took these plants into space in order to see how they grew in space, because that's what we do. And the plants had a really hard time adapting. They found the greatest mass, and they oriented toward that. So if we were near the moon at the time, closer to the moon than the Earth, the plants would grow toward the moon. If we were closer to the Earth, or the gravity was stronger there, they'd grow toward the Earth. And when they found the spot right in between where everything's even, the plants only could grow toward light, and they could not figure out what direction to grow in. So if you had them underground, the plants were just growing in every direction. And that's what we spent billions of dollars on. But now we know it. Touch. Thigmotropism. Plants respond to touch. They don't like to be touched. What ends up happening is, you've probably seen plants wrap vines and wrap their tendrils around other objects. If you've ever seen a cucumber grow, you've got these really long runners that come off, and then they'll touch something. Once they touch, there's some slight changes in water inside the plant, because, when in doubt, water. And it causes the plant to start to curl. So the tendrils begin to wrap. A lot of this is also because of where auxins are being distributed in the plant. They grow they expand on the opposite side of the touch. So those plants grow longer, and you start to get a curl. Flooding. If it floods, plants put up nematophores as fast as they can. If they can't get nematophores up, they die. Let's see, flood's bad, fire's bad, drought's bad. If a plant loses more than half its water weight, it's dead. How many of you guys have killed a plant before because you didn't water it? Yeah, there we go. If you've killed a plant, likely it's because of lack of water. Sometimes it's because of too much water. Water really matters to plants. Plants in dry areas, or areas that are prone to becoming dry, have adapted various mechanisms to prevent water loss. We talked a little about C3 and C4 and CAM plants. They've adapted their photosynthetic mechanisms. Others have adapted by increasing the amount of wax on the outside of them. So plants have to adapt to these dry areas. And then plants can actually attack other organisms. They have to stop pathogens, and they have to stop herbivores. What's an herbivore do? Not trying to trick you. It eats plants, right? Some plants literally produce hydrogen cyanide gas, in order to stop herbivores from eating them. More interestingly, if a plant is being attacked, if a plant is being eaten, it will start to put off secondary metabolites. These are aromatics, I guess, that go up into the air, and they get moved by the wind. All of the plants that are downwind of that first plant then start to turn on their production of poisons in order to stop the herbivores from eating them, which gives herbivores, so there's this back and forth. So what do the herbivores do? They don't go downwind. They always go upwind because they can get to the plants that haven't experienced that chemical signal. It's also why you don't see a lot of entirely dead areas where herbivores have eaten everything. Herbivores browse and then move on. That's not because the herbivore gets bored. It's because the plants around that plant are now producing defenses. They're responding actively to an attack. Some plants, they're really interesting. They have a relationship with other organisms. One is, I think it's the acacia plant. It produces a metabolite. It produces a chemical on its that's released from its stem that ants love. Not only do they love it, literally they're addicted to it. They're like little drug addict ants. So as a giraffe comes by to start eating it, the plant produces this drug for ants, and the ants swarm the giraffe, trying to stop it from getting their drugs. This is the equivalent of you going toe-to-toe with Godzilla. But these ants do it because the plant is literally controlling them by moving secondary metabolites from one place to another. Plants are pretty neat, and they're ruthless.